General Hospital spoilers reveal that Willow has turned her back on what was once the most sacred thing in her life, a family built not only on love but also on blood, sweat, and the ultimate sacrifices of the man she once called her husband. Michael stood by her side during her weakest moments, when she fought cancer, when she had no hope, when everyone else feared the possibility of losing her, yet Michael still held her hand tightly, remaining her steady support despite the pain. He is not perfect, but he is loyal, sincere, and steadfast. He loved Willow not for her idealism but for the broken parts she tried to hide. Yet, when he stood on the brink of life, she chose to walk away, not out of hatred, not out of an obvious betrayal, but because she was drawn to an illusion Drew had created, an illusion of freedom, of novelty, and of the feeling of escaping from old constraints. Willow didn't just abandon a home she once prayed to keep. She ignored Michael's tireless efforts to heal, to adjust himself, to become a better husband, a stronger father, and a man worthy of the love she once gave him. While Michael slowly but steadily recovered, trying to stay in touch with their children, trying to set aside his personal pain to maintain peace, Willow, the one he trusted most, drifted further every day, slipping deeper into the sweet trance of a relationship led by illusions and Drew's subtle control. This act triggered one of the most extreme shifts in their once strong family story. Willow, who had once advised Michael not to let past hurts shape their future, now allowed vague emotions to pull her away from reality. She not only ignored the changes Michael was working hard to prove but also denied his role in their children's lives, allowing Drew to intervene too deeply, even signing legal documents giving Drew guardianship in an emergency situation. This wasn't just an emotional betrayal, but a deliberate betrayal legally, of his rights as a father, and of the honor of the man she once loved. That choice sparked a new wave of obsession, not just for Michael, but for Willow herself. Inside her, though she didn't fully recognize it yet, was a growing torment with each action Drew asked her to take. She began to feel as though she was being forced to choose between what she once believed to be right and a new reality that was unfamiliar but also suspicious. The so-called freedom Drew promised was built on control, on sweet words hiding ulterior motives, and on a chain of actions that gradually caused Willow to lose her sense of self. Meanwhile, Michael, though hurt, chose not to retaliate with explosive anger. He patiently observed, gathered the facts, and began a strategic counterattack. The crazy part was, the one once seen as weak, cast aside by his own family, was now becoming the focal point of a complete rebirth, a man not only reclaiming what was his but also daring to overturn the system that allowed Willow to slip so far. More and more, this event was becoming explosive. Willow slowly realized she wasn't loved for who she truly was in her relationship with Drew, but for the political and emotional value she brought to him. And when Michael began to act, not out of vengeance, but to reclaim justice for himself and their children, Willow found herself trapped in an inescapable situation. She was forced to face what she had done, choices she once thought were right, now turning into a series of decisions pushing her into isolation and loss. And then, the inevitable change came. Michael was no longer the one in need of salvation from others. He was slowly becoming the one in control, the one who would dictate the story, the one whose voice was being heard. Willow, on the other hand, found herself in a passive position, judged not only by the community but also by her own conscience. What she once saw as freedom, as release, was now revealed to be another form of restraint, and when all the masks fell, when all the illusions dissipated, Willow would have to pay the price for what she had discarded, a real family, a genuine man, and a future where nothing needed to be hidden. And that would be the deepest obsession, realizing that the most precious thing was lost by her own hands. The story surrounding Willow is gradually becoming a whirlwind, drawing all the characters involved into the epicenter of a radical change. What once seemed settled, what seemed like established relationships, is now being upended by covert calculations, buried wounds, and newly revealed schemes. Michael and Drew, two men who once represented opposing extremes, one representing true love and family, the other representing new desires and personal satisfaction, are now converging toward a common goal, Willow, who is no longer the passive character in their family drama but the center of a battle for power and emotion. The obsessions Willow once caused for Michael, the way she abandoned him when he was recovering, the way she allowed Drew to replace him as a father and partner, have become the smoldering flames that are burning through the peace they once had. Michael is no longer the one who just endures. To end the years of being rejected, and to prove that he is no longer as weak as before. Meanwhile, Drew, who once offered sweet advice to Willow, is now showing his true controlling and manipulative nature as he starts to play psychological games, making extreme legal choices to completely remove Michael from the children's lives. Both men, in different ways, are creating immense pressure for Willow, the woman who thought she had found freedom but now finds herself trapped in a tangled maze of calculations and consequences. Willow, who once longed for stability and peace, is now caught in a risky power and emotional struggle. Every step she takes, every choice she makes, could become a knife wound cutting back at herself. Memories of her home with Michael, of the moments he held her hand by her hospital bed, now replay in her mind whenever Drew grows cold, calculating, and distant. She begins to feel lost when she realizes that the man she trusted is now slowly pushing her into a pit of legal and emotional dependence. And outside the Quartermaine mansion, lawyers, witnesses, and even the media are beginning to turn toward Michael, as the hero on his way to rebuilding his position. Willow, caught between the lines of the past and the present, of emotions and reason, of guilt and hope, is facing a terrifying truth. She no longer controls her own story. She is just a factor caught in the whirlwind of the two men who once loved her, now fighting, not just for the children, but for wounds that haven't healed. And in the midst of it all, a great shock is about to explode, a shock that won't just affect Michael, Drew, or Willow, but could destroy the entire family foundation they once shared. The price of betrayal, silence, and seemingly harmless decisions is nearing, and when that happens, none of them will remain unscathed. Willow will have to answer, is she the victim, or the one holding the knife? And who will stand firm when all the secrets are exposed to the light? Willow is nearing an abyss, where her wrong choices, blind emotions, and flawed calculations have paved a path full of consequences. The guardianship of Wiley and Amelia, the two little beings who were once the only source of strength during her darkest times, is now slipping out of her grasp. The legal papers she once signed with a near arrogant confidence, granting Drew the right to take care of the children if anything were to happen to Michael, are now becoming pieces of evidence working against her, pushing her into the defendant's seat in an unforgiving battle. This insane change didn't happen suddenly. It's the result of a cascade of wrongs piling up, step by step, action by action, and decision by decision, leading to the tragic outcome she now faces. With each passing day, Willow watches as the situation shifts inch by inch. Michael, the husband she once thought had been forgotten, returns as someone entirely different, tough, logical, and determined. He's no longer the hurt man, quietly stepping back to make way for her new choices. Now, Michael is the father standing in court, armed with evidence, testimonies, and a legal strategy backed by Carly, Jason, and Diane. He's using every shard of his pain to build a legal fortress, ready to protect the children from any influence he deems harmful, even from their own mother. Willow begins to feel cornered. The court, public opinion, the Corinthos family, even those who were once neutral, all are shifting their stance as the truth is gradually revealed. She can no longer use sympathy to cover her past actions. The evidence that she abandoned Michael during his recovery to publicly pursue a relationship with Drew. The fact that she ignored Michael's rights and decisions related to their children. Her complete trust in a man under investigation for legal manipulation and wrongful interference in medical records. Each of these details is weaving together into a tightening web, ensnaring her future with Wiley and Amelia, not with hate, but with reason, with the law, and with the consequences of her own choices. The mental strain on Willow can no longer be masked by a calm exterior. Sleepless nights, unanswered calls from lawyers, and cold stares from those who once loved her are pushing Willow into a state of total isolation. In her mind, She's now torn between protecting Drew, the man she still believes freed her from the past, and holding on to the last remnants of her motherhood, which are slipping further away. Every time she looks into Wiley's eyes or sees Amelia's smile, her heart tightens because she knows those may be the last memories she has of them if the court rules against her. The situation has spiraled far beyond her control. New calculations, legal adjustments, and strategies are being quietly set into motion, each one working against her like an unstoppable storm. Michael no longer needs to speak much, because the evidence he holds speaks for him. And the truth is, even without saying it, Willow is beginning to be convinced by the very logic she once rejected. She was wrong. She rushed, was blinded by trust in someone who now cannot pull her out of the mess they both created. If things continue this way, Willow will not only lose guardianship. She will lose her legal right to be a mother. She will face a future where she's allowed only weekend visits, where every call of mom will be monitored by legal and psychological conditions. And the most painful part is, she's walked herself into that dead end, not because anyone forced her, but because of the wrong decisions she herself made. The punishment has begun, and no one has the power to stop it, not even Willow. Willow is facing the most solitary moment of her life. When she walked down a path she thought was paved with freedom and personal choice, she didn't realize that every step away from Michael, away from Carly, and even away from Nina, was a step into a deep, isolating abyss. Michael was once a devoted husband, a loving father, a trustworthy companion through illness and hardship. But Willow turned her back on that and instead chose a man full of ambition and delusion, like Drew, someone she thought would bring her independence, but who ultimately drowned her in a whirlpool of power, manipulation, and dark political games. She rejected Nina, her birth mother, who had desperately begged for forgiveness. Willow, still carrying the wounds of her childhood and dark memories of the Dawn of Day cult, thought distancing herself from Nina would protect her. But when all the familiar faces turned away, that rejection became a mental burden, making her realize she had lost the last opportunity to be unconditionally loved. Carly, who had been like a second mother to her, also couldn't forgive the betrayal when Willow continued to let Drew interfere in the lives of the children and strip Michael of his rights as a father, rights he should have had all along. Now, with the custody trials looming, Willow has nothing left but cold files, harsh testimonies, and skeptical glances from all who once stood by her. Everything she once believed in, love, forgiveness, faith in her own choices, is unraveling. Wiley, the little boy who used to run to her when he cried, is now slowly being drawn into Michael's embrace, the resilient father who overcame physical and emotional pain to return and protect his child. Amelia is too young to understand, but her little heart also feels who is always there and who is truly sacrificing for her. All of this paints a grim picture for Willow, where she is no longer the center of the world, but a character standing on the sidelines of her own life story. The obsession with losing her children, with becoming an outsider in the family she once cherished, is pushing Willow's psyche to the brink of collapse. Drew is becoming increasingly exposed for his manipulative nature, as he's not shy about executing plans that make Michael look like an irresponsible father. Instead of waking up, Willow continues to stand by Drew, an irreparable mistake that now has no turning back. Meanwhile, Michael is not only regaining his position as a father, but also showing immense personal growth, both in spirit and stance. He's not retaliating with angry outbursts, but with patience and a profound understanding of what Willow is losing. Carly, Jason, and even Diane, all stand behind Michael, turning him into a legal and emotional force that Willow cannot fight. Willow has made herself a stranger in the lives of those who once loved her most. And now, when she sees Wiley holding Michael's hand as they walk into court, when she hears Amelia's whispers in Carly's arms, when no one is beside her in her weakest moments, she finally realizes that she has lost everything. Not because someone took it from her, but because she let go. And the price for that loss is not just the right to raise her children, it's the complete collapse of a mother, a wife. A woman who once believed she was strong enough to walk her own path, without anyone by her side. But the truth is, no one can exist without love. And now, Willow has no one to love, and no one loves her anymore. The end of Willow's story has finally been confirmed, a conclusion that is no longer surprising to those who've watched her string of wrong actions. But still a shock to those who once felt sympathy for her. After all the chaos she caused, after turning her back on true love and betraying those who sacrificed for her, Willow will have to leave General Hospital in total isolation, no husband, no children, no family, and most importantly, no trust from anyone. The truth is, Willow has nothing left to cling to. She rejected Michael, who overcame physical and emotional pain to return to his children and protect his family. She chose to side with Drew, a manipulative man who's willing to control her life for his own benefit. She dismissed Nina, her birth mother, who desperately asked for forgiveness, as if familial ties were something she could easily discard. And now, when every mask has fallen, Willow must finally face the consequences of all her selfish, blind, and ungrateful choices. Carly, who once saw her as a daughter, has now cut off all support. Jason, who once tolerated things for Michael's sake, is now focused solely on protecting his real family. Diane, who fought to protect Michael legally, no longer has any sympathy for Willow in the legal filings. Willow has become a name struck from all relationships, no longer a wife, no longer a mother, and no longer family. Losing custody of Wiley and Amelia is just the first step in the chain of failures Willow must endure. But the decision that forces her to leave GH is the clearest finality to this haunting journey. No longer having a place in the hospital, the last safe home, where she once served and found her ideals, now turns its back on her. The leadership, colleagues, even patients, cannot forgive the abuse of power, the forgery of guardianship papers, and the betrayal of the medical community's trust. And the most painful part, Willow cannot defend herself. Because all the evidence against her is true. She signed over full rights to Drew. She used Michael's medical guardianship for wrongful purposes. And she calmly allowed 2 young children to fall into the hands of a man under investigation for unethical actions. Meanwhile, Michael, the husband she once rejected, has rebuilt trust with the entire community as a strong father, a man who didn't abandon his family even in his weakest moments. Willow has lost everything. She has left behind a destroyed image, a distorted memory, and a future with no way out. The punishment is not only legal, it's the exile from the hearts of those who once loved her. And in a place like Port Charles, where every action is remembered, she will never find a place to return to. This is not a random ending. It's the brutal reflection of all the choices Willow made, and now, she's receiving exactly what she deserves to bear. A mad adjustment, a perfect calculation, and an inevitable conclusion. Drew is facing an emotional pain that even he could not have foreseen. He thought that his journey with Willow was a hopeful turning point, a chance to make amends for his past mistakes. But now that he has seen her fall apart completely, losing custody of her children, losing the trust of her family, and being cast out of every arm that once held her, Drew has no choice but to face the fact that he has become an indispensable part of the chain of disasters that has destroyed Willow's life. The breakdown is not just legal or social, it is deep inside Willow's soul, and Drew knows it. He cannot erase the image of Willow sitting silently in the middle of an empty room, eyes blank, hands shaking as she receives the official notice of losing custody of Wiley and Amelia. She was no longer the strong, unyielding woman she once was, but a broken soul. Pushed to the brink by the very choices Drew had once supported, defended, and pursued in the name of love. But what hurt Drew more was the rage he could feel building inside Michael. The relationship between the 2 men had never been simple, but now it had turned into a silent war, not just for Willow, but for their children, for their honor, for a distorted truth. Michael, after returning from Germany with a strong will and a clear purpose, was no longer the wounded husband. He was a father demanding justice, a son restoring honor to his family, and a man ready to overthrow all those who had wronged him, and Drew was the first to fall into his crosshairs. Every look Michael gave Drew was a cold knife. Every resolute action Michael took in court was a declaration that he would not forgive. And even though he doesn't say it out loud, Drew knows that one more mistake in his career and his dignity will be crushed under the fury that's building like a lightning storm inside Michael. What makes things worse is that Drew is losing ground everywhere. The Quartermain family is starting to waver. Old allies are retreating. Even those who once supported his relationship with Willow are now choosing to stay silent or, worse, publicly turn their backs. Drew, who has come out of war, through identity crises and trauma, is now defeated by the only thing he believes can save him, love. And when things seem impossible to get worse, another nightmare strikes. The fact that Willow signed over Drew's power of attorney could be used by Michael as evidence of his mental manipulation, leaving Drew in a passive position both legally and morally. Every word that had been signed on paper now became shackles around Drew's wrists, pushing him slowly toward the abyss with no way out. Worse still, Drew began to clearly sense that Willow, even as she was falling, secretly blamed him. There were long nights in the hospital, where she didn't say a word to him, her eyes averted, her lips pressed tightly together. There were no more whispers of love, no more hasty hugs, no more trust in a future together. There was now a deafening silence between them, something more painful than the heated arguments. And in that chaos, Drew knew that if Michael decided to use all his power to clean up the past, he would be the first to be swept away. He was no longer Drew Kane, the hero who returned from the dark, but a symbol of failure, dragged down by the love he had built. In his final moments, Drew begins to wonder, can he make amends? Can he, with some act of courage, salvage some of his lost honor? Or is it too late, and will he be left to watch as the world collapses, taking with it the woman he loves and the future he once dreamed of? In this storm of truth, cost, and heartbreak, Drew is no longer a guide, he is a drifter, pushed toward the horizon where the light has begun to fade.